Okay, very
Oh,
good.
you're with me on it?
I'm just going to introduce you. And
Are
then
you
I'll-
on the screen with me?
I'm on the screen with you.
And then what do you do?
Then I'm going to go over, sit over there.
And I'm going to put my arm in your, like this, and I'm going to walk with you.
I don't think so.
Yes, I am,
No,
Dave.
I tell you what, if you don't like it, we'll just throw it away.
No, I know, because with the overhead, I've been there, done that, Dave.
Not here, but we've got little gremlins up there that just do
No,
it just right.
if this were the first time, I wouldn't say, you know, but I've been through this.
Okay. Good morning. Today is 13 May, the year 2009. I'm Dr. Dave Thompson, a volunteer at the Palm Springs Air Museum here in California. Part of our mission is to record and preserve the history of our country's military conflicts, especially World War II. As part of the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., we conduct interviews of veterans and civilians who participated in those conflicts. And today I'm here at the museum along with special guest Bert Collette. And today we have the honor and the privilege of interviewing Mrs. Caren Marsh Dahl. Mrs. Marsh Dahl was a young lady who danced with the servicemen at the Hollywood Canteen during World War II, and prior to that was the stand-in for Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz. So we're going to talk to her about that and a lot of other things. Caren, so good to have you here, dear.
Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome. Now, I'm going to get you lined up. I'm going to get this lighting just perfect. There it is. Caren, would you spell your full name for us, please?
Pardon me?
Would you spell your full name for us, please?
Caren, C-A-R-E-N, with a C, not a K. Marsh, M-A-R-S-H, because Caren Marsh was my professional name.
Okay.
Then I married a gentleman by the last name of Dahl, so it is now Caren Marsh Dahl.
And Marsh was your maiden name?
Yeah, Caren Marsh.
Okay. And when and where were you born?
Was born in Hollywood, California.
And do you want to share what year that might have been?
3 weeks ago, I was 90. That'll tell you what year I was born.
Congratulations.
1919.
You look wonderful. And 3 weeks ago, what was the date then?
April 6.
April 6th.
And my parents had me then because the World War I had just finished, and that was supposed to be the war to end all wars. So they said, this is the time to have a baby. They had me, and I've lived through more wars than any other generation. So,
Yeah.
can't look ahead.
Yeah. And what was your father's name?
Lou,
And Lou Marsh?
yeah,
And what did he do?
he was a stockbroker.
Okay. And how did he end up in Hollywood? Where did his ancestors all come from?
I don't know. Well, I know he came over here from London
From England?
when he was a teenager.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they never liked to be talked about. You know, that generation,
Yeah.
leave me alone.
And your mother, what was her name and her maiden name?
Jenny
Okay. And what was her maiden name?
Meyer.
Okay. And did they meet in Hollywood?
I have no idea where they met.
Yeah.
I don't know. We didn't, in that generation, we didn't talk a lot about where were you born, what did you do.
Yeah.
They're doing that a lot now.
Yeah. And did you have any brothers and sisters?
I have a sister,
And what's her name?
Dorothy,
Dorothy.
Dorothy Miller.
Like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And where does she live?
Right now, she is in Banning.
Mhm. And
Do you want me to keep looking at you when I answer?
I don't care. If you can look at me, or if he's better looking, you can look at him.
No, I'm not.
Hi, Bert.
Not younger either.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Okay.
Now you grew up during the Depression, I think. What was that like for you and your family?
I was 8 years old. My sister was 5. And all I remember is that my mother told us that we wouldn't be eating the kind of food we had before. Our dance lessons would have to stop. Swimming lessons would have to stop. Piano lessons would have to stop, which we were doing all at that age. that made the biggest impression on me.
Yeah.
And then she also said that a lot of people were gonna lose their jobs and not to worry because maybe Daddy'd be all right.
And he was
That's all I remember.
Yeah, and he was able to keep his job, do you think?
I don't remember
Yeah.
if he did or didn't. If he didn't, they didn't tell us.
And was your family very religious? Did you go to church a lot
No.
when you were a kid?
We lived by the golden rule. That was it.
And that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
And do you remember the street that you grew up on, or where you lived?
No.
Okay. But you were in Hollywood somewhere.
Yeah. I just remember we were near Sunset Boulevard,
Uh-huh.
between Sunset and Hollywood Boulevard. I think it was Crescent Heights Boulevard.
And what did your kids do for fun when you were growing up?
We had plays. We pretended.
So you were interested in acting even at a young
Way
age?
back.
Really?
Way back. Yes.
And why do you think that is?
I have no idea. My parents weren't in it.
Yeah.
Something's just in you that doesn't.
Yeah. Did you get to go to movies when you were a kid?
Yes, but we couldn't see some of the movies we wanted to. My parents were very strict with the kind of movies we saw. I remember when I was in junior high, I wanted to see Clara Bow, the It Girl everybody was talking about. And my parents wouldn't let me see it. So I ditched a class in school and went up to Hollywood Boulevard and slipped in the theater and saw Clara Bow.
The It Girl, yeah. Any other early movies that impressed you or that you remember?
No, but I was madly in love with Buddy Rogers.
And Wings?
And I wished he could have been my leading, yeah, I wished I could have been his leading lead. No, not Wings,
That was 20.
although I saw that later and it broke me up. I think that is
Clara Bow was in
the
that one.
saddest
Yeah.
movie I ever saw. Really sad. No, it was he was playing the drums and
Oh, yeah.
he was young and I was in love with him.
Yeah,
At the age of 12.
You think of him in Wings, but he was a dancer and a singer and all this kind of stuff.
He
wasn't
was and so handsome.
Yeah. Well, you know, we have that Buddy Rogers Theater downstairs
I know
here
you
in the
do.
museum, which is
I
really
know you
nice.
do.
Yeah,
And I met him after I moved here, and I have his autographed picture, and it's hanging on my wall to satisfy that little 12-year-old in me.
Where did you go to? Where did you go to grammar school, grade school, first of all?
Gardner School, Grammar School.
And where did you go to junior?
Bancroft Junior High School. Hollywood High School.
Hollywood High.
Graduated Hollywood High.
Were any of the
Oh,
stars
yes, I
kids
know
that-
what you're gonna ask. Judy Turner was there. And her name was changed to Lana
Really?
later.
I didn't know that.
Nanette Fabre,
Yeah.
Judge, what was the name? Judge, I can't think of his last name. Started with a W. Wapner.
Oh,
Remember Judge
yeah,
Wapner?
sure. Oh, yeah.
Little Joe. He was short. He was the shortest boy, and I was the shortest
No
girl.
kidding.
So we were always sitting opposite each other.
My dad loved that show.
Smart little boy, A student.
Yeah. So were you in plays and things like that in high school?
All of the shows.
Yeah. What were some of? Do you remember some of them?
One of them was the musical The Red Mill. And I can't remember all of them, but I danced through my whole school years.
Do you remember any of your teachers or your dance teachers that you had?
I remember my first ballet teacher. Her name was Edith Lindsay, and she was a protege of Anna Pavlova. Do you know who Anna Pavlova is? Yeah. And then I learned from Doris Russell. Funny how you remember all the names of your teachers. Doris Russell, and then Theodore Koslov, who was from Russia, and he was a partner of Anna Pavlova at one time. And he'd stand there with the cane, stomping the cane on the floor to make you keep track of the time. And if your toe wasn't pointed just right, you got a little whack on the toe with the cane.
Did you do all types of dance, tap, ballet, and everything?
I started with ballet, and I'm glad I did, because I always heard ballet was a foundation for any kind of dance you ever want to do, and that's true. Because I went from ballet to tap, and I've taught I don't know how many dances since, including Hawaiian dancing, belly dancing, line dancing, country western dancing, Spanish dancing, done them all.
And you graduated, what year did you graduate, probably?
Winter 1937 from Hollywood High.
From Hollywood High. And what did you do then?
My parents wanted me to go to college, and I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to dance. What was the point of dancing all your life, your school life, if you weren't going to do it? So they said, if you can get a dance job before this next semester starts, you won't have to go to college. So I did everything I could to get into the next movie. I wanted to dance in the movie musicals that were being made at all the studios. It was tough getting in, but I didn't give up.
So what was the procedure? You would just go around and...
I landed my first job at MGM in a musical starring Eleanor Powell and Nelson Eddy, dancing. Yeah, went on an interview.
Oh,
Found out about it from a girl who worked in the movies, but it was tough getting through. I'll never forget that. Don't give up. If you want something bad enough, don't give up.
Do you recall the name of that movie?
Yeah, it was called Rosalie.
Rosalie.
That was my first movie, the one I was with Eleanor Powell
Yeah, we may have that.
and Nelson Eddy.
We may have that here at the... I have a lot of
You might.
old movies there, so I probably do.
There
yes.
were hundreds of dancers in that movie.
Yeah.
Dancers today don't get the break we did then because they're not making musicals like that anymore.
Were you in any Busby Berkeley movies?
Yes, I worked with, really I was so lucky to work with those legendary dance directors. Busby Berkeley, Nick Castle, Hermes Pan, Chuck Walters, the cream of them. And I was lucky enough to be chosen by them to work in their movies. So I feel honored, really.
So was it kind of like what you see in the movies where the girls go and the director or whoever's sitting out and just watching
Yes.
you guys? Is there a whole line of you doing at the same
Yes.
time, and then he picks
Yes.
up you, or...
Yes, you get in a line, and behind them is another line, and behind them is another line, depending on how many girls are at the audition. And they show us a step. And then we've got to go right into it like we've known it all our lives. And you, and you, and you, and you, thank you, the rest
Right.
of you.
But you don't do it individually, you all hold the whole line, does the
Oh, yeah,
step at the same
individually, it
time?
would take them
Right,
hours.
yeah.
No, we just went, but it was a huge stage.
Right.
You know, those sound stages are enormous. No,
Yeah.
we just all went into it and then they'd pick.
That seems like it would be kind of frightening. Were you nervous when you would go through that
Yes.
stuff?
Yes. Wouldn't you be?
Yes.
Right out of high school and you want a job so bad so you don't have to go to college? I had to get that job. Sure, you do your best and
So-
I was not chosen. I mean, they said to me, don't call us, we'll call you. And I went home and I told my mother, they like me and they're gonna call me and I'm gonna be working in that movie. And I told my friends, they liked me, they're gonna call me. I found out later, don't call us, we'll call you means forget it. So I changed my outfit where I was in the interview, and I went back again and stood in the back line and came up toward the front, did it again, and I was chosen. So that was my first experience.
It taught you not to
Learned
give
a
up.
lot since then. The movie business is a wonderful experience for learning. And the first thing you learn is rejection. to anybody interested in getting in show business, how do you take rejection? That's number one. If you can't take it, don't even try. Don't try. Because you'll spend your life crying. It's rough. It's rough.
So how did you deal with it?
Well, luckily, one of the biggest rejections to me was when I was standing in for Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz. And MGM was going to have a float on the, it was a New Year's Day parade, Tournament of Roses.
Yes.
Yeah. And Judy had a double also. You have a stand-in and you have a double. And the double was going to be Dorothy on the float. And 2 nights before the parade, they called me and said that her double was sick, couldn't make it, and I would be Dorothy on the float. I was so thrilled. Told all my friends I was going to be Dorothy on the float. My parents told their friends they were going to be Dorothy on the float. And there was no TV in those days. And there were no freeways in those days. And if you lived far away, you had a way to go. So my dad drove me out to the studio at 5 in the morning because they wanted me there at 6 to be made up and ready to leave to go on. And I got there and I said, "Here I am." And the assistant said, "Didn't they call you?" And I said, "Call me for what?" "Well, Bobby felt better and she's back there now being made up." And that was my first real rejection and disappointment. I cried all the way home. But I learned a big lesson. If you can learn a lesson from your rejections, then you're okay. I learned never to tell anybody what I'm going to do until I've done it. Then I'll talk about it.
So how did you get that job in The Wizard of Oz?
I was dancing in one of the musicals, and a man approached me and he said, "We're starting a musical, Wizard of Oz, with one of our new players, Judy Garland. I've been watching you, you're just the right size and you do it, and you can do that little skipping thing down the yellow brick road. Would you be interested in being her stand-in?" I didn't know what a stand-in was, because when you're dancing you don't have a stand-in. But it was a job, so I said sure.
And what is a stand-in?
A stand-in is the one who does all the work as a substitute for the actor while they're setting up the lights and adjusting the camera. In other words, I wouldn't be seen on the screen, but it takes hours and hours to get ready to film a scene. The public isn't aware of that. It can take half a day just to get ready to film one scene. And they don't make the stars stand there in front of the camera. I went down that yellow brick road, and I went down that yellow brick road over and over while the camera was being adjusted, while the lighting was being adjusted, and when the cameraman and the director were satisfied with the result, then they called Judy. I stepped out, she stepped in, they shot the scene. And then on to the next one.
And would you be wearing the exact same outfit?
Oh, you have, exactly. You couldn't tell the difference unless it was a close-up with our faces. But this far away, you couldn't tell the difference. Exactly the same. Fixed my hair that way. It was interesting because I had all that experience in the makeup department, the hair department. I had no idea they could do what they do there.
Did you have much interaction with Judy and the other
We had
stars?
lunch several times together.
How did you get along? How did you get along?
She was only 16 years old, and I was 19 years old. If Judy was here on this interview with us today, she'd be going on the 87th birthday next month. So that tells you where I am. That tells you where I am. 90.
Yeah. But you're here and she's not,
I'm
so I
here
think
and
you're
she's
you're
not.
ahead of the game. I think
Right.
so. Do you remember what you were doing December 7th, 1941?
Yes, I sure do. Does anybody ever forget that day? No, I was at the country club with my husband, watching him play tennis with a friend. It was in the morning, beautiful morning. And I was sitting up in the bleachers, nobody else was there, just my husband, his friend, and me watching. And then over the loudspeaker, we heard a voice say, "Attention, attention, Pearl Harbor has just been bombed." I went, "What?" You know, they stopped on the court. We all ran into the clubhouse, put on the radio, no TV then, and listened to what was happening. And from then on, you know, the rations and putting the black curtain at your window so the light wouldn't go out.
And had you been up on current affairs, could you see something like this coming, that our country would get involved in something like this?
No, I had no idea.
Now, your husband, when did you get married?
I was married in 1939.
And what was his name?
We don't talk about that.
Oh, we don't. Okay, that's fine. Okay, December 7th comes, and so then what do you do during the war years?
Quite a lot. Number one, we started knitting sweaters for the boys. And I joined the Naval Aid, wore a uniform, and we went down to the different docks, I guess you'd say, and watched the ships come in bringing the boys who'd been overseas, give them coffee and donuts. And near where I lived in Hollywood was a beautiful big mansion. And the woman who owned the home was named Ann Lair. And she turned her house over to the boys. She had beds there and served them breakfast every morning and had what you call starlets serving breakfast. I was down there every morning serving breakfast. And all the kids began to call her Mom Lair. People in the service who were through Hollywood during the war will remember Mom Lair. She was a darling, darling, generous woman. So I served breakfast there. I danced at the Hollywood Canteen.
What was that like?
Oh, those boys, it was during the days of jitterbugging. And those boys could jitterbug. And so many of them were for farms. You know, without television, what did they know about anything? Off of the farm and in to see the movies. And I tell you, I saw some of the stars give the boys the kind of kisses they'll never forget. But I danced with them, I loved it. I just felt bad to think that these young kids would be going overseas fighting a war.
Now, were you working in the movies and
Yeah,
stuff like that?
yeah.
All through that too?
I was working from the time I got out of Hollywood High. Even when I was married. I was still, couldn't give up my dancing day.
Were they all dancing type movies, musicals that you were in?
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. It was later on I went into acting, but during those years, dancing. Yeah.
Do you remember any of those particular movies during the war years that you were in?
Yes. Well, I worked with all the Judy Garland, Mickey Rooney movies.
Yeah.
You know, let's put on a show. Babes in Arms, Babes on Broadway, Babes something else, and Babes something else. And Girl Crazy, Best Foot Forward, so many of them. Just one after the other. I was very lucky. But I was a good dancer, Dave. I was a good dancer, and I looked about 8 years younger than I was. Because in a lot of those movies, the kids were like 16 and 17. Their mothers had to be on the sets with them. And I was like 24, but got away with it.
But that's pretty strenuous work. Did your body hold up to all that strenuous dancing and stuff?
Did my body hold up? You tell me, Dave. Bert, did my body hold up?
It certainly did, yeah.
Well, I'm talking about stress
Sorry.
fractures and things like that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And we didn't have a union then, Screen Actors Guild, that far back. And they would make us work maybe till 8 or 9 at night, and we had to be back like at 7 in the morning. When SAG couldn't do that then. We had to have a certain amount of time.
Did you have any injuries?
Any what?
Injuries?
Injuries?
Yeah, from dancing.
From dancing?
Mhm.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. I didn't do acrobatic work. It wasn't that.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
So when did you start actually doing acting?
I think I started, yeah, that's what started me. When I was cast in a film for the servicemen,
Mm-hmm.
Paramount Pictures had seen me in something, I don't know what, and they were looking for a sweet-looking girl, very innocent, sweet-looking girl, and they thought I was it. And it was to keep the boys on the straight and narrow, keep them from getting a disease from these girls, and they were worried because they were getting them from innocent-looking girls. The boys knew enough to stay away from the ones who, looked like it might be trouble. But that was my first job at Paramount.
Yeah. And
3 days work.
And I think, is that the the VHS tape that?
Excuse me?
Is that the tape that you brought in?
Yes,
Yeah.
I brought that tape here.
Yeah, well, we'll take
Yeah.
that on.
Because what Variety is, the magazine
Mhm.
Variety? Yeah, it said I was seen by more servicemen than any other actress in Hollywood. No wonder they had to look at me. But I felt funny doing it because of the subject.
Yeah.
I was supposed to have syphilis and give it to the boy. Give it to him. We didn't do anything but go out dancing and take a walk in the park. Didn't show what happened. Today they'd show everything of how you got it. But they didn't then. You won't take a walk in the park and kiss, fade out. Next morning the boy says, "What's happened to me?" And they take it from there. And the doctor in the film, no, he wasn't a doctor, he was captain, I guess, explaining to the boys, that was Paul Kelly, wonderful actor. He was in Crossfire and a lot of wonderful movies, good actor. But we were never in the same set together, so we didn't work together. But that was it. And then after that, Paramount cast me in a movie with Alan Ladd. And it was called, they changed the name, Wild Harvest.
You were about as tall as he was, weren't you?
Yeah, he was a short man, but he was really built well. I mean, good-looking guy,
Yeah.
good-looking guy.
And Shane, everybody remembers that movie that he was in.
Shane,
Yes.
yes. Yeah, it was great. It was great.
So, what was the movie about? The movie you made with Alan Ladd?
It was about it wasn't just Alan Ladd. Alan Jenkins was in it. I've got a picture of them in my book, the whole cast, which would be, if you want to see
Yeah,
it,
I'd like
look
to
in
see
there
that,
and you'll
yeah.
see it. I can't remember. I wasn't his leading lady. Dorothy Lamour was. I was the wife of one of the harvesters who was told by Alan Ladd I can't come along with the group. I got to go back home, even though I was just married to the harvester.
Was it kind of a Western movie or a farm movie?
I think it was, no, I don't know if you'd call it a Western. Not like the Westerns we think of,
Right.
shoot 'em up kind of
Yeah.
thing. No.
But it sounded like it took place out in the country or something.
Yeah, country stuff and harvesting
Right.
and so forth, yeah. But he was very nice. The whole cast was very nice.
About what year would that have been?
1940. I look in the book, the dates in it. See, that's why I finally wrote it, because I can't always remember
Yeah,
everything.
sure.
But
Well, I
at
don't
the
expect-
time,
don't expect you to.
At the time, when you sit down and you start writing, it comes back. So it's all in there. If you
But
want
probably late 40s, early 50s?
Not in the
right?
50s, no.
Not in the 50s, but in the
No,
40s.
40, maybe 6,
Mhm.
7, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. And then I was in a Western with another short man, Bob Steele.
Yeah.
Remember Bob Steele?
I was just watching him this morning. He was in a Roy Rogers movie, or John Wayne movie.
Oh,
Yeah.
John Wayne?
Mhm.
No, Bob Steele was
Yeah.
such a nice guy.
Yeah.
You know, these short men, they may be short this way, but I'm going to tell you, they are built that the great looking bodies.
That cowboy that's been on Dancing with the Stars, he's really a strong guy.
And, well, as a dancer.
Not so good, but I mean, as a
Yeah.
bull rider, he sure is.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. But I worked in a movie with Roy Rogers, too, as a dancer in a dance scene. But when I was on the set with all the dancers, there's a picture there in my book. I mention this because if you want to catch up on what I'm saying, you can look at it and know.
I will.
But the photographer on the set called me out of the line of dancers and said he wanted to take a picture of me with Roy Rogers. So we had our picture taken together, and I had no idea then that it would get the exposure it got. It got on lobby cards, it got on big billboards. It's just amazing. They liked the picture.
Yeah. What movie was that? Do you recall?
It's called Hands Across the Border. I was not an actor in it. I was a dancer in
Yeah. But you had your picture taken for the lobby card.
it. It wasn't for then. It was just, I didn't know.
Yeah, but
I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was going to be a picture, but it's been so many places.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably, it may be on the internet, where you can find these things.
I don't know.
I'll
Well,
check.
there's
I'll
a
take-
picture of the lobby card in my book.
Oh, there is.
Oh,
Okay.
see,
Well, you
I
can-
didn't miss a trick. I figured this is going to be it. And people say, when are you going to write your next book? This was about my life. I'll have to wait till I come back again in my next life to write about that one.
Were you ever in any movies that were in color?
Oh, most of them were in color.
Well, yeah, a lot of the musicals.
Those
were.
musicals were all in
Yeah,
color.
yeah.
The westerns were black and white.
Yeah.
That was black and white.
And so how many years did you act then? How many, or how long was your career, or is it still going?
Well, I started the dancing when I graduated Hollywood High in 1937. And I danced through my first marriage, 40s, 50s. I was dancing right up to 1949. Because I went to New York and danced in a show besides.
Oh, on Broadway kind of a show?
Yeah, on Broadway.
Really?
Yeah. And acting. And did some television.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
With, do you remember the ventriloquist?
Paul Winchell and Jerry Mahoney?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, did you?
I worked with him on his show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in what capacity, what were you doing on this show?
Sketches, his sketches. And then he was going into the Capitol Theater on Broadway. And he asked me if I would work with him on that. Because then, in the 40s, before the movie, you know, they had the stage show. And he was doing a sketch on the stage show. And he asked me if I'd like to do a sketch with him. And why not? The Capitol Theater on Broadway, who would say no to that? But I never got to do it.
How come?
I'm waiting for you to say, how come? Are you ready? Well, it wasn't going to be for about 3 weeks. So I wanted to fly home and see my family. I hadn't seen him for over a year. And he said, fine, but be back on August such and such. This was July. So I didn't make it because the plane I was in on the way to Hollywood crashed into the side of a mountain. And I was in it.
Oh my gosh.
One of the survivors crawling. It's all in my book, Dave, the whole thing with the picture of the way the plane looked afterwards and everything.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did you get injured?
Oh, yeah. They were going to take my left foot off. It was so badly injured. There it is. My my precious left foot. The doctor said I'd walk again, but he said, Caren, you'll never dance again. Your foot's too badly injured. And I let it go in one ear and out the other. And all I did, oh, and he said, and you won't wear high heels again. And to me, 4'11", you know, you gotta wear high heels. I'm wearing high heels all my life. But I just kept picturing myself dancing. Not just dancing, but dancing in high heels.
And you were able to overcome it, and
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of what goes on up here is what affects the rest of you.
Where was the crash?
It was just before we landed in See, LAX wasn't built then. Everybody landed at Lockheed Airport in Burbank. So just as we were coming in for a landing, the plane, they told us, we didn't know what was going to happen. It was just like sitting here. You know, like when we get an earthquake, all of a sudden there it is. We were coming in for a landing, and all of a sudden everything shook and jammed like that. And I found out later he was flying too low over the mountain range to get to the airport. And one of the wings hit a large boulder, was torn off, and the rest of the plane just shot ahead and burst into flame. I got out of a flaming plane, Dave.
Did you get out one of the doors, or what?
It cracked wide open.
It just cracked open.
And the woman sitting next to me, when we first sat down, I was at a window seat. She was in an aisle seat. And she told me she was the wife of a pilot. Her husband was a pilot. So when this happened, I mean, I was in a daze, because you don't believe it. It's like, what's happening? I must be dreaming. You know, it doesn't register. At least it didn't with me. And she helped me unfasten my seatbelt, grabbed my arm and said, we got to get out of here. And so she practically dragged me. I was on my feet, at least one foot, and the other one flopping along. And we got out of the plane. And it wasn't until I was out of the plane and standing where I was standing that I looked around and saw I was on the side of a mountaintop. Couldn't believe it. They told us later we crawled 500 yards down the side of the mountain to the dirt road. There was a fire road down, and that's where they rescued us.
And there were fatalities on the plane?
Oh, yeah. I saw bodies lying there while I was climbing down. People were screaming. It was awful. And when I wrote about it in my book, I wrote it in a way so that people, well, I wrote the whole book in a way so that the readers would experience everything I was experiencing throughout everything, whether it be having lunch with Judy or going to New York or experiencing this plane crash. Yeah. I've lived.
Yes. Now, you said you were going back to see your family. Are you talking about your mom and dad that you were going to see?
They're gone. Oh.
I mean, at that point.
Oh, at that point?
Or were you married at this juncture?
No,
Oh.
I wasn't. I wasn't married
Okay.
at this point. Trying to think how. My mother was to meet me at the plane when it came in. And her experience was she kept saying, when is that plane coming in? Nobody told her. And finally, one of the guys working at the airport didn't ask her to sit down, just went up to her and said, sorry, the plane crashed and there were no survivors. So I wonder she didn't drop dead of a heart attack right then. She had heart trouble after that and did eventually die of a heart attack, but that had to do something. But there was a man who came up, talking to us on the road, one of the rescuers, and he came up to each one of us just lying there. And I was looking at my bloody foot that looked like all I could think of is it looked like hamburger with white noodles sticking up. I couldn't eat a chicken noodle soup after that. I'd look at those noodles and burst into tears. or raw hamburger. But he asked if there was anything he could do for me, and I said, you can get word to my mother that I'm all right. And thanks to him, he got in touch with the airport, paged her. She was paged to go to the telephone. And when she went to the phone, this man said, I just saw your daughter, she's all right. First she knew that I was alive. So she called my dad at work. They rushed a private ambulance to me because he said they're taking her to the Van Nuys Receiving Hospital. And that's the next thing I knew after they carried me from the dirt road to the ambulance with my dress in shreds hanging all out over me. I was lying there in the hall of the hospital, and the next thing I knew, I heard their voices, and they were leaning over me, crying, and they got me into the private ambulance, rushed me to Cedars of Lebanon. I think it's called Cedars, no, it's Cedars of Lebanon now, or is it?
Cedars of Sinai?
Cedars Sinai, yeah, that's
Yeah,
where.
That's good. That's a good place, yeah.
And a very fine doctor. One of the toes was split wide open with the bone sticking up. He pulled it around and formed a little toe. That's my proud toe. See the third one? It's a little tiny one.
Yeah, I'll be darned.
And kept a little piece of nail on it. So,
How long were you in the hospital?
about a month.
And when did you get back to work?
Well, I got a phone call from someone that I knew in New York. And I didn't realize, and he didn't realize, that we were going to be an item. That we were in love with each other, didn't even know it. And he came out on the train to see me. Every month by train.
Yeah. Oh, and what was his name?
That was Dahl. Yeah,
What was his first name?
go down. Yeah.
So what did he do? What kind of work did he do?
He is a Broadway press agent. He was press agent to Mike Todd, Billy Rose, he had a lot of shows and handled Round the World in 80 Days. We came out for that. It's all in the book. It's all in the book.
And when did you go back to work?
I didn't go back to work. I couldn't go back to work.
Yeah.
It took a while but I wanted to dance again, and I couldn't dance in ballet shoes, and I couldn't dance in tap shoes, and I couldn't dance in shoes. And I thought, what kind of dancing can I do that I don't need shoes? Hawaiian dancing, barefooted. So I learned Hawaiian dancing from a woman who was excellent. And what else could you do? Barefoot dance, belly dancing. So I still was with my dancing. And who needed shoes? And my foot by then, was strong enough and could do it.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
So did you start teaching dancing or what?
No, I didn't teach dancing then. It was from then, let's see. Well, my husband and I got a divorce eventually. Married for 16 years, had a son. And after we were divorced, I started that's when I started teaching. Yeah.
And when were you living? Where were you living?
Well, when I married him, we moved to New York City. Lived right in Manhattan. Yeah.
Is that where you started teaching?
No, I didn't teach then. After we were, I was just Mrs. Bildahl.
Right. But after you were divorced, did you
After
move
I was
somewhere
divorced,
else?
moved to Florida.
Oh.
Moved to Florida with my son, and started teaching dancing then.
And your son, what is his name?
Jonathan. And he had a radio show, and he's a stand-up comic. It's all in there.
Okay. And where does he live now?
Texas.
Texas.
Dallas, Texas. Married.
Does he have children?
And he has a son who will be 24 in September. Yes. So I've got a 24-year-old grandson.
My. And
he's 6 feet tall. My husband is 6 feet tall. My son is 6 feet tall, close to it, 5'11". My daughter-in-law's 5'7.5". I tell you, when I'm with my family, I feel like a munchkin, Dave.
Where in Florida were you living?
We moved to Palm Beach, Florida.
And when did you first start coming to the desert, to Palm Springs?
1989. I moved here to the desert.
And what brought you here?
It brought me here, well, when I was a child, about 4 and 5, I guess, I had asthma. And the doctor told my parents to get me to the desert, that it healed a lot of people with the dry air. So we used to come down here every time I'd start that wheezing again, we get in the car, drive all night, and come down here and stay in Palm Springs. So I had memories of what Palm Springs did for me, gave me my breathing back, and I've just loved Palm Springs. So I wanted to come back. I thought I'd go back to Hollywood where I started, but it wasn't the Hollywood I knew. Hollywood Boulevard was horrible. It was run down. It was dreadful. It's wonderful now. They've renovated everything. So I came here to the desert.
And where did you buy a place here when you came? Or
Did I what?
Where were you living when you first came to the desert?
When I first came to the desert,
Mhm.
there was a place I don't remember the name of it. It was just a few blocks from the Palm Springs post office.
Okay.
And I can't think of a little one-bedroom place. One bedroom. Came with my sister. She came with me. And started teaching dancing here.
You did. Where were you teaching?
I started teaching in the apartment house I was in. That's how I started everything, Dave. When I was in Palm Beach too, my neighbor got to talking to her, told her that I could do Hawaiian dancing, belly dancing. Oh, teach me. And then her friends, you're learning it? Teach me. Next thing you know, I had a class. So everywhere I went, I knew I could get a class. Same down here. I went to a senior center. I said, would you like classes? Oh, yeah. So I ended up at Mizell. It wasn't called Mizell then. But at that senior center, and I had exercise classes. I was teaching tap dancing, Hawaiian dancing. I wasn't into the belly dancing yet.
Bert, go sit over next to her for a little bit. I want to let you guys talk a little bit about your wife, I think, took from her. Is that not correct?
Actually, Caren tried to get my wife to do belly dancing, as I understand. That's a story that Garland brought home anyway, and it never worked out for some reason. But I remember there was, and I can't remember what day of the week it was. It might have been a Tuesday. They would go down to the Elks Club in Cathedral City.
Yeah.
Remember that?
I was teaching there too.
And they did line dancing. And I'm not a dancer, and I don't know too much about what line dancing was about. But there were about 15 or 20 ladies there. And that's how, and Carolyn had just come out to the desert, been out here maybe a year or so. And that's how she made all of our contacts with Ann Bonner, and who's no longer with us, but they became very good friends. And Meredith Hawes, and Ann Gimmian, and
They stayed with me
forgetting
for
3
years.
or 4 of them, but they all go have lunch every now and then.
Yeah, we all became such good friends.
And that lasted for, I don't know how many years, Carol.
Oh, good 8,
Yeah.
I would think. Yeah.
So-
I was teaching right up to about 2 years ago.
Really?
And mostly with private lessons
Mhm.
toward the end.
Yeah. And what do you do to?
Thank you, Bird.
What do you do to occupy your time now?
Many things, Dave. Like having lunch at a restaurant where I met a very handsome man.
Yeah.
And this very handsome man turned out to be a doctor. And this very handsome man who was a doctor wrote on the back of his card that he was associated with Shall I go on?
Be my guest.
You, Dave.
Yes.
And we exchanged cards.
We did.
And that was the end of it. I never thought another thing of it.
So you didn't pick him up right there on the spot, did you?
No, I was waiting for a gentleman to join me.
Speaking of cards, here is the card as we, let me get this thing out of the way a little bit. There is her card.
Did it pick up?
Kind of. Yeah, that was, and I'm glad I hung on to that.
And then out of the clear sky, I got your letter saying, I heard that you were interested in doing something here for the Air Museum, and if you can have an interview, please call me.
Yeah.
I thought it was a radio interview, or I probably would have said, I'm just sorry, but I'm too busy.
Well, I'm glad you're here. Now, tell me a little bit about your book. When did you start your book, and how long did it take to complete and all?
Well, I had no intention of writing a book, but people were always asking me so many questions that I couldn't answer all the time. What was it like to work with Judy? Did Errol Flynn make a pass at you? Did you like the movies or the stage better? When you were in the plane crash, did you know you were going to crash ahead of time? You can't keep answering everywhere you go. And then I started hearing, Caren, why don't you write about your life? Put it in a book and then we can read it. And I thought, put it in a book? I wasn't a writer, I was a dancer. But I kept hearing, write your book, Caren. When are you going to write your book? Put it in a book, we want to read it. So one day I sat down with a pen and a 3-ring binder filled with loose leaf paper. And I thought, I'll try to write this in a way so that the readers will feel that they're experiencing everything that I'm experiencing. And the result was my book.
And when was that completed?
Took me 2 years to write it.
And
Because it's weird to write your book when it's about your life. You know, all these things come back and you're reliving. And I discovered that I had a photographic memory. Instead of just remembering something, it was like I was back there again.
Well, how did you decide what to put in, what not to put in, and that sort of stuff?
I started it from the age of a baby in a crib until all through those years in kindergarten. And then I showed it to a friend of mine, and she said, Caren, don't start it that far back. Start it with your dance career. People don't read about you when you're in your crib. Started. So she's one of the ones acknowledged in my book because she told me that. So I took it from the age of 4 when I started my first ballet lesson. And things just kept coming back to me, Dave. And it's can be very traumatic, especially when I got into the plane. You know, because I found I was reliving it again. I could feel it again, what I was doing. And I felt the plane and what happened again. And I just wrote it down, tore it. You know, you see people writing in the movies, they write something, they crumple it up and throw it down, they write it, crumple it up. And this 3-ring binder was about this thick, pages and pages of loose leaf paper. And then when I got through with some of it, I thought, I can't do it on this, and I don't have a computer. How am I going to get it printed? And I had a friend, the one I told you about, who would send something here, and he would take the pages from me when I gave it to him and do it on his computer. And that's how we finally, got it together. It's a long story of what happened.
But I mean, just your career in the movies. I mean, it seems like you could have had a book, that thick of all. How do you weed out what's important? What do I keep and what you don't?
It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. And I could have said things. About people that. In fact, I was told, they said, you better put a lot of juicy things in that book. And I didn't want that kind of a book. I wanted the kind of a book that would inspire people to get through some things that I had been through. That's the kind of a book I wanted. Or if some young girl or guy picked it up, it wouldn't be who slept with who and how great somebody was in bed or whatever. It would be how you get through something when things are tough. And that's the kind of a book I wrote.
You had too much dignity to write the other kind of book.
Too much what?
Dignity to write the other kind of book.
Dignity? No, it wasn't. Thank you.
No, I think
But
it was.
No, it wasn't dignity. Because I could have written plenty. It was, I just didn't want that kind of a book out there. When I could write one that I felt could inspire people. And it has. I've gotten letters back from young people, Dave, saying that if I went through Caren, if you went through what you went through, then I can go through what I'm going through now. Fan letters from Switzerland, Germany, England. I can't believe it at this stage of my life.
Could you maybe tell Dave, I know it's in the book, but maybe you could expound upon the fact of these festivals that they have, and you've traveled all over
There are
many places to have these things.
Well, there are Wizard of Oz festivals all over this country. And I have been invited to be what they call a celebrity guest at these festivals. They pay my fare, they pay the hotel, they pay my food. I have my book there, I have my photos there, and people come from hundreds of people, not only from this country. I've met people from Canada, from Europe, who come here for 3-day festivals to celebrate the Wizard of Oz. And they want to meet the Munchkins. And since they can't meet Judy, they want the closest thing to her. They want to meet her stand-in. So I've met all these people and remarkable things that have happened.
When you were making the movie, did you envision that it would be the success it has
Nobody
been?
did. No. And to me, it was just another job. It was fun because I'd never done stand-in before. It was the first and only movie I worked as a stand-in. I went back to my dancing. But it was a job. And Judy was darling, we had lunch together. She had no idea then her life was going to be what it was, Dave, I'll tell you that.
So why do you think that it became the success that it did?
I've wondered that and talked to a lot of people about it. There's something about the Wizard of Oz that touches people's hearts. There's something about it. Men, women, older people, young people. These festivals, little kids are dressed as Dorothy. Women are dressed as Dorothy. And they're all carrying the basket with little Toto. I mean, it's just amazing. There's a picture in my book, I mention it again because I don't want you to miss it. And I got a picture of a man holding a dog dressed as Dorothy with the pigtails hanging down and the little skirt, dressed as Dorothy.
How many little dogs did they have in the movie? Just the one, or did they have more?
How many what?
Dogs that played Toto. How many?
Toto,
Just
and I
him?
think Toto had a stand-in.
Yes.
I never
Yeah.
knew if, I always felt I was a stand-in carrying a stand-in. But it was fun, and I was working, 19, hadn't been married yet, and I was working.
And what did you get paid for that, or in most of your movies in those days?
I
or
don't
even
remember. I can remember what I was paid for the musicals, but I can't remember what I was paid for Judy.
What were you paid in the musicals?
The musicals, they paid us, was wonderful. If you were working in a musical for like 3 weeks, like Best Foot Forward, went from Best Foot Forward right into Girl Crazy. And on the interview, they told us they were going to pick 1 or 2. They were going to pick us for 1 or 2 of the movies. And luckily, they picked me for both. So if you had a 3-week run, it was pretty good. It was $55 a week. Now you say today, $55 a week. But I had a beautiful one-bedroom apartment on Hollywood Boulevard, renting for $55 a month, which I understand now from somebody that is a condo worth over $500,000 today. So $55 a month then for it was pretty good, especially living home. I was back with my family.
We're just about ready to wrap this one up. Caren, anything you'd like to close with, like to share with us that you had with
Yes,
so far?
if you would take the picture of what I was like when I was working in the movies, I brought it. Can you hold that up to show it?
Why, certainly. Oh, Bob's got the, okay, let me,
It was in the envelope.
okay, I'll do that, and, because I'm gonna add your other stuff on, so I'll add more to this, so I'll do that kind of
Okay,
stuff.
just like to show,
I will.
so they get an idea of what I was like then.
Absolutely.
And what
Caren,
now?
thank you so much for
Dave,
sharing with us. It's wonderful for you to come in.
Oh, gosh, I'm glad. I'm
And
glad
Bert,
I did.
thank you for helping out here.
Well, I wanna
with us.
thank you.
Yeah, Dave, how about that?
I want to thank
Bert.
Caren for, introducing my wife to all these wonderful people she's still friends with.
But look, you know, it's amazing. Of all mornings I could have been here, you're here.
Something special.
Yes, you are.
Absolutely.